Today we have a guest speaker coming in, Susan Graham. Susan Graham is a senior professional in human resources for NFP. I'm going to pass it over to Ben Dow real quick so he can kind of finish the introduction with Susan before we kick it over to her.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
So today we have Susan Graham, who is, Matt said, is going to give us some training relative to anti-harassment, and she'll explain more about that. I believe that we as a whole have a lot of integrity and pride in doing the right things. We plan our work to provide the best possible outcome for safety, quality, and efficiency, which we talk about on an everyday basis, and we plan ahead for that. And it's not by mistake that a lot of people, go by our jobs and say, wow, that was well done, well thought out, well executed. One of the things that I think a lot of us, including myself, struggles with is in our interaction with others, when a problem or something arises that's not going according to what our plan is to be, is we act and say things to each other before we think. How many times have any of you, and we've had many conversations about this, after something has been said, have said to yourself, boy, that wasn't the best thing to say. I could have done that better. And what I see is understanding the expectations, both legal and moral, in this respect is very important in order for us to be able to pre-plan our communications and think about executing our communication the same way we do in executing our daily jobs. And that requires a lot. It requires education, which we're going to get some right now, and understanding. I think we have all the right stuff inside, but I think in order for us to discipline ourselves, starting out with this training is important for us to be able to be successful in that. So with that, I hope I kept it under 30 seconds. I want to pass it over to Susan and allow her to get her show going. Thank you, Susan.
All right, thank you, Ben. So did everything that Ben just said. Good morning, everybody. Glad to be here so early on a Friday. Looking forward to a really nice weekend this weekend. So just to quickly go over, it's kind of reiterating what Ben just said, really what the goal is of talking to you these next couple of weeks. I really want to give you the know-how so that you're able to stop yourself and say, you know what, is this okay? Is this not okay? Behavior-wise, what I'm saying, and then to take that knowledge and actually apply it to when some of these situations pop up. So, the ultimate goal here is to have you working in a workplace that doesn't have harassing behavior going on. And it's more than just harassing behavior. It's behavior that's inappropriate or that maybe could be making other people feel uncomfortable, because it's all about respect, and it's all about accepting that other people have different perspectives than you do. And I always do this disclaimer because I'm not an employment attorney. I'm approaching this, of course, with some legal know-how, but I'm approaching it from a pure HR professional standpoint. So let's take a minute to go over what some of ECI's workplace policies are. There is a new handbook that's going to be coming out. I know that it's been being worked on these last couple of months. Most of it really isn't any different than what's in your current handbook, but I did look at the new handbook, and I wanted to just take a minute and go over some of the policies there that actually touch on workplace behavior. There's a section in there that talks about ECI's philosophy. And in that one, it's stating that you as employees should be looking and behaving professionally in the workplace. And there's that word respect again. All workers should be treating each other and clients and the public with respect. It also touches on what's appropriate use of your computers and your company devices and your internet. And it very clearly states that any policies that we have in our handbook also apply not just to your face-to-face or your phone conversations with your coworkers, your clients. It also holds true when you're using all of our electronic equipment and when you're using our internet. The non-discrimination and harassment policy, this one has been updated because the state of Vermont has become very, very specific with what should be in an anti-harassment policy and what companies need to be addressing. And it's very detailed. It actually defines what harassment is and provides a whole list of examples of what potentially harassing behavior would be. It also talks about reporting and how you go about reporting any instance of potential harassment. Talks about what's going to happen if you've been found to be engaging in any kind of harassing behavior. And it also is very, very clear that you as an employee are protected from any kind of retaliation because you have filed any kind of a complaint of harassment in the workplace. And then there's also a code of conduct in the handbook, and that's what's really setting the expectations for your behavior. It's very clear that it says strive to maintain a positive and professional image of ECI to our employees, our clients, vendors, subcontractors, and the public. And when we get a little bit more into what the state of Vermont is saying that their harassment law covers, it's not just covering you as employees, it extends out to your vendors and anyone that you come into contact with in the course of doing your job every day. And the code of conduct is very clear about maintaining respectful behavior, whether you're at work, whether you're driving a company vehicle, anytime that you're representing the company, which would also include any time that you're wearing the company logo, that you need to be following this code of conduct. So I'm sure when this handbook actually comes out, you'll be getting more in-depth review of it. So talking a little bit about what you as employees likely expect when you go into the workplace. You really expect that the people around you are going to be just plain doing the right thing. I think there's a certain trust among yourselves. You're expecting that you're going to be treating each other with respect. There's camaraderie. There's absolutely camaraderie in the workplace. I know since I've been working remotely since March, that is the one thing that I miss the most, is just getting together with people and joking around with them. And that's fine. That's a big component of your job. You're expecting that the leaders in your organization are actually going to be demonstrating leadership and that they're going to be modeling the behavior that they're expecting of you. And clear communication is really key. And I think that every employee expects that the people around them are going to be clearly communicating with them. Their supervisors are going to be clearly communicating with them as well. So if we talk a little bit about what's going on in the social climate nowadays, it's a little bit wild out there. Taking a step back, one of the real pivotal moments has been the Me Too movement over the last couple of years, because what that's really brought to the forefront is some pretty egregious workplace behaviors. And it's been made very, very public. So when these things become public, it really empowers people to step up and say, you know what, this kind of behavior isn't okay. Whereas before, maybe some employees just kind of sat back and said, you know what, this is just the culture here. This is what it is. I want to keep my job, so I'm just gonna grin and bear it. Or more likely, they said, yeah, this is what the culture is, so I'm out of here. I'm going to go find another job. So now people are really feeling much more comfortable coming forward and saying, I'm not okay with this kind of behavior. You've got a lot of racial tension going on out there, the political and social polarization. I don't need to get into that. I mean, I could talk for an hour about some of these things, but I'm not going to. And the access to the social media is really kind of fueling the flames on the fire. It's keeping all of those things really going and going strong, and sometimes not in such a good way. You've got a lot more workforce diversity, and you might think, well, we live in Vermont, we're not very diverse, but in reality, we're not just talking racial and ethnic diversity. We are talking age diversity. We're going to talk a little bit about demographics and the different age groups that you've got in your workplace. You're talking about diversity of backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, just the kind of households that people come from, single family households, families where you have two parents and children, no children. There is a lot feeding into your workplace. And there is a lot less tolerance for inappropriate behavior in the workplace when it comes to things like off-color jokes, bullying behavior. You know, the workplace that I entered 35 years ago is a very, very different workplace than what you find now. Some of the things that went on in workplaces years ago would make your skin crawl now. And it's just not going on anymore, and it's just not tolerated. So, you know, what that means for you is that sometimes you have to take a step back if the workplace that you started out in whenever you started working has changed. You have to accept that change and say, you know what, it's different now, and I just need to go with it. There's also been a lot of legal changes that have gone on in a from a legal perspective. Harassment laws have definitely evolved. They've become much more clear. They have been much more explicit in the kinds of punishments that happen if you are engaging in harassment. There's been a significant growth in employment-related claims, and those are claims where people either hire their own private attorney or claims that people file with either the state attorney general's office, which is what we have here in Vermont, who takes harassment complaints, or the EEOC, which is the federal organization that takes complaints. Significant growth in employment-related claims there. Again, here in Vermont and in a lot of other states, we've got the inclusion of vendors and interns and contractors into your anti-harassment laws. So basically anyone who you come in contact with in the workplace is now included in these anti-harassment laws. And there's been a lot of incorporation of employee education into harassment laws. Here in Vermont, employee education is not mandated, it's strongly recommended. ECI, therefore, is not doing this education component because it has to. It's doing it because it wants to. And it's very committed to just making sure that everybody remembers that, hey, this is a workplace where everybody should be feeling safe and where everybody should be respecting everybody else. So I said we'd talk a little bit about diversity, and in your workplace, I'm seeing a big diversity in your demographics. So just going over in general these different categories, and again, I'm not looking to pigeonhole anybody into any one of these categories. We all know that it's just general terms that are out there. When I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, we called it the generation gap. Same idea, it's just been labeled differently. So if you take a look at the different age categories, baby boomers, everybody knows the baby boomers, they're your older workers, right? Everybody's heard that expression, okay, boomer. It's generally your 55 and older. A lot of them are starting to approach retirement age. They might be thinking about leaving the workforce. I will mention that a lot of baby boomers are staying in the workforce way longer than they used to. It's not just assumed that people are going to retire when they're 65 anymore. A lot of them are staying in longer and longer. The baby boomers have a lot of work experience and a lot of work knowledge and a lot of workplace knowledge. As I mentioned before, very different workplaces when they entered. A lot of things that were going on there are just absolutely not acceptable now. So, you know, what we run across here is sometimes baby boomers are thinking, well, you know what's wrong with that kind of behavior? People have been behaving like this for years. Yeah, that's true. But when you look at the younger employees, you know, you get into your Gen Xers, which is generally the 39 to 54 category, you know, they bridge the gap between the baby boomers and the millennials. You know, the Gen Xers are very committed to their jobs. And again, they're starting to say, you know what, this behavior isn't the behavior that I've always seen in the workplace, and it's not okay. And then you get to your millennials. Those are the 23 to 38. I think millennials tend to get a little bit of a bad rap. I think that one of the big differences with the millennials is, you know, first of all, they have not worked generally in a workplace where there's inappropriate behavior going on. And if they see it, they're the ones that are the most likely to be calling people out on it. They're very committed to having a work-life balance. They like to get a certain fulfillment out of their work experience, as opposed to baby boomers. We were more likely to say, you know what, I'm really not so thrilled with my job, but I'm getting a paycheck, so I'm happy. The millennials are more likely to be saying, I'm not feeling okay in my workplace. I don't like it here. I'm not feeling fulfilled, so I'm going to go find another job. So again, there's a big difference in backgrounds and in mindset in your particular workplace. And now we've got that what they call Gen Z coming in too, which is your 22 years old and younger. And, you know, these are the ones that were practically born with a smart device in their hand. Very, very different workplace approaches. And if you take a look at the demographics within ECI, this is how it breaks out. You actually have a quarter of your workforce as baby boomers, which is a pretty good chunk. And if you combine that with your Gen Xers, that's roughly half of your workforce. So then you've got your millennials, which is a huge chunk of your workforce. It's, you know, 42% it's huge. So you can see where there could potentially be issues between your millennials and your Gen Z, which is pretty much 50% of your workplace, and your baby boomers, which is a quarter of your workplace. Because again, that the philosophies, the mindsets are very, very different. And I can see that this might be where some differences might be happening. And if you look at your male versus female, you are very male oriented, not surprising in the construction industry. It's not unusual. It's not anything the ECI is doing wrong by having so many men in the workforce. It's kind of the nature of your type of business, not at all unusual. But what it does mean is that, you know, if you're a male, you probably have to be a little bit more cognizant of not slipping into the pattern of, you know, for example, what's considered locker room talk, or, you know, just bantering back and forth with comments that maybe a female might be taking offense to. You have to be very cognizant of not slipping into that mode. And it's not just men dominating the numbers over the women. I've worked with organizations that were very heavily female oriented. And the men there have come out and said, well, I feel uncomfortable surrounded by all these women. The things that they talk about, you know, it's embarrassing what they talk about. So just so that you know, it goes both ways. So let's talk a little bit about what's illegal as far as discriminatory behavior versus what's just plain inappropriate. And we are going to be taking a lot of time focusing on that over the next couple of weeks. So I like to use this graphic. If you take a look at this line of fire, this limbo line, and think of everything above that line as your actually illegal behavior, that's what's going to get you into the most trouble. That's what could potentially lead to legal action. Everything below that is potentially unacceptable behavior. So if you've got a very low level of unacceptable behavior, you know, chances are you can take care of it, you can address it, you're really not getting close to that threshold of fire. But the higher that you get underneath that threshold, so the more inappropriate behavior that you have going on in a workplace, the closer that nose comes to that line of fire, and the more risk that you're taking of, wow, this is really getting out of hand. So what's really important to remember in the workplace is that any kind of inappropriate behavior really does need to be addressed at the onset, and it's really not going to be tolerated in your workplace because nobody wants it to get out of hand to the point where it could potentially become illegal. And for those of you who are visual, there are a lot of terms that I'm throwing around. Discrimination, harassment, discriminatory behavior, harassing behavior. So I kind of wanted to just break it out so that you can see how it all fits together. So illegal workplace discrimination actually involves treating an individual less favorably in any term or condition of employment based on a legally protected status. And the next slide is going to go over what a legally protected status actually is. So it's if you're treating somebody differently because they fall into one of those statuses. And then harassment is just one form of discrimination. And sexual harassment is one form of harassment. So maybe that will help kind of break it out for you when I'm throwing these terms around. So these are your protected classes. You can see there are a lot of them: race, color, ethnicity, gender, religion, so forth, so on. Some of them are protected under federal law, some of them are protected under state law, a lot of them are protected under both. Some of the ones that are specific to Vermont, sexual orientation or identity and gender identity, most states have protections for those classifications, not all do. Crime victims, if you are a victim of a crime, you actually are considered a member of a protected class. So you can see that Vermont has a lot of protections out there. So if there's anything inappropriate going on in the workplace, say for example, any off-color jokes, and they're geared towards members of any of these protected classes, that's where you start getting to that line of fire and crossing that threshold into the realm of that's illegal behavior. If you have off-color jokes going on because somebody's having a bad hair day, that's not a member of a protected class. So, it might not be particularly appropriate, but it's not going to cross that threshold into illegal. Where it becomes illegal is when the behavior is geared towards someone who is a member of one of these protected classes. And I want to take just a minute to go over the disability protection. Again, I could be talking a whole training on just disability protections, but take a look at all of the things that are considered to potentially be disabilities, because a disability is considered a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activity. And you can see that so many of these things that are considered disabilities, you can't tell by looking at somebody that they've got this particular disability. You can't tell that somebody has diabetes or mental illness or that they have cancer, or maybe that they've got a learning disability. You can't see it. And I starred alcoholism and drug addiction because, yeah, they're considered a disability, but I just wanted to put out there that you're not protected for using alcohol or drugs in the workplace. It's only if you are not using in the workplace, but you're in recovery. That's considered a disability. So, off-color jokes that are geared towards, someone who maybe is struggling with an alcohol addiction. If you could have someone in the workplace saying, you don't know this about me, but I'm an alcoholic and I've been clean for 10 years. But what you just said is a little bit of a problem. I'm taking offense to that because you have no idea what I've been through. So that being said, I think I kept under my 15 to 20 minutes. What we're going to be doing, I'm going to be joining you the next 3 weeks with another section. So in the meantime, if you have questions about anything that I've gone over, feel free to give them to Ben. Is that where we're going with questions, or Matt? Either one. Yeah, anyone. And they're going to put them together. And if they have an answer for you, because it's concerning a specific ECI policy, they will address that with you. And anything that is a question specifically on the content that I've just covered, they're going to put those together, and then I'll be able to go over them at the beginning of next week's presentation.